Around this time of the year, Macau's casinos are usually bustling with tourists celebrating the Chinese New Year. Instead, they're nearly deserted. The spread of a new coronavirus has caused millions of people to cancel their holiday plans and pull back spending.
You can see now almost no one there, and yes, we have quite a big problem for us doing business, like as a small business.
The drop in consumer spending rocked international markets last week. Equity markets on the mainland, where businesses are worst hit, had been closed last week for the holiday season. They finally reopened on Monday, and investors began dumping stocks immediately. By the end of the day, the Shanghai Composite Index had fallen nearly 8% over fears of weaker demand. Shares plunged despite a $22 billion cash injection into the economy by the government. But experts say businesses could lose much more money, nearly $60 billion, because of the outbreak. Government officials are warning of a drawn-out recovery from the contagion, which has so far claimed more than 360 lives.
The epidemic's impact on the economy, especially on consumption, is increasing. In particular, service consumption, including transportation, tourism, hotels, and catering, and movie entertainment have been hugely impacted.
Beijing says it's much more capable of dealing with epidemics now than it was back in 2003 when the SARS virus jolted China's economy. But scientists are still trying to understand the new coronavirus. And until they do, the economic toll from the outbreak will keep on rising. Motheo Khoaripe, TRT World.
And for more on this, China political and economic analyst Einar Tangen joins me live now from Beijing. Welcome to the program, Einar. Firstly, let's look at this bloodbath on Chinese markets. We know that the Lunar New Year holiday was extended because of this coronavirus outbreak. We've seen stocks fall as much as 9% at the end of the day's trade. Should people be worried here? Because we know that whatever happens in China, the world's second biggest economy, could have a contagion effect on other markets.
Well, you're already starting to see that. Unfortunately, what happens in these cases is that you get a panic situation. So right now, people are trading on emotion, not necessarily facts. To go back and look at what happened in 2003 with SARS, you'll notice that that was a 6-month duration. And during that period, China still grew by an additional 1%. In 2002, it was 9%. At the end of 2003, it was 10%. So what happened is there was a real downturn in the months that were affected by SARS. But then after that, there was pent-up demand, and the factories were extremely busy trying to catch up. Now, in 2020, the Chinese economy is now 4 times the size of it that it was in 2003. So the impacts are quite different. You're really, as you mentioned in the previous segment, there's a lot of impact in terms of tourism, anything to do with entertainment. But remember, those dollars are not gone. They're simply being delayed. People still have the money. This is one of the few countries in the world that has a very major savings rate. So I can pretty much guarantee that when they get the opportunity, the Chinese will spend it. The question right now, economically, is how long will this outbreak last? And right now, China is establishing the gold standard for reacting to a pandemic, although it's not as serious as SARS and MERS and the avian flu and the swine flu. It still is something that is very important to them because it's spread so rapidly.
Now, over the weekend, as the death toll climbed past 300 in China, we saw several officials from Huanggang province, which is near the epicenter of Wuhan. They lost their jobs essentially because of their perceived performance in reacting to this outbreak. Do you think officials as a whole, when I'm not talking at a national level, but at a provincial level, were they too slow to recognize the severity of this outbreak?
You know, hindsight is always 20/20. The problem is that there's a flu season every year, and trying to figure out exactly and if this is a new virus or it's something that's just happening, as part of an old virus is very, very difficult. There was some indication about a week in that the concentration of people who were getting this virus was very localized to Wuhan, and particularly to what they traced back to a wet market. And as a result, they started investigating. Now, remember, they were able to complete the genome in under a week. That means they were able to actually decode the RNA virus as it was. Now, remember, back in 2003, it took over a year to do the same work. So this is quickly advancing things. China is hoping to have this wrapped up by the end of April in complete containment and see the peak in a week or two, maybe 3, depending on how things go. So, with this action, though, there has not necessarily been a tremendous amount of support from the international community. The science community, WHO, has reacted very positively. They said good things about China. But you're seeing a lot of things in the international press that's very critical. On some of them, they're saying that Chinese economy is about to collapse, that this is going to affect the leadership. This is, unfortunately, just a lot of chat. This is kind of the rumor mill going, and it seems to be aimed very much at creating a negative image of China, along with a lot of other news.
Okay, we'll see how it all unfolds. Einar Tangen, thank you so much for your time from Beijing.